the restoration or repair of Ukrainian energy infrastructure, and how quickly will allies be able to deliver on their pledges? And maybe in the more long-term support, do you see a specific role for NATO in training Ukrainian soldiers, something which is now done by the UK or by the EU, but not by the alliance as such? Thank you.
So, first of all, I cannot quantify that because I left the meeting where they made the pledges, and they were making pledges as I left. So I think it would be very wrong if I now start to summarize those numbers. But it is a meeting going on. I gave my intervention. I told them how NATO can support these efforts with our comprehensive assistance package. And then they're going around the table, and there will be more pledges for certain. Then, of course, some allies may have to go back to the capitals to make some decisions, but I'm absolutely certain that allies will sustain their support, and that will include also support to Ukraine to address the devastating consequences of the attacks on the power grid. Let me add that, of course, we need to support them to repair and to replace what has been damaged. But we also need to support them to defend, to shoot down incoming drones and missiles. That's the best way to protect Ukrainians against these attacks and to ensure that President Putin does not succeed in trying to weaponize winter. But the concrete numbers, you have to wait until allies have made the pledges. Then on training, well, so NATO allies have, as you alluded to, trained Ukrainian troops for many years. I remember very well, I went to Yavoriv, just outside Lvov, back in 2015, and there I saw how UK, the United Kingdom, United States and Canada trained Ukrainian forces. NATO has been there for many years, helped to build capacity and modernize their armed forces. And of course, we can absolutely also do that in the future. Exactly what kind of framework that will be done in, that doesn't matter so much for me. What matters is that NATO allies in different formats are training Ukrainian troops. I recently visited the United Kingdom, where countries, of course, United Kingdom, Canada, but Finland, Denmark, Norway, Netherlands, and many more allies are training thousands of Ukrainian troops. And I also welcome the initiative by the European Union. That will also be many NATO allies that will provide training. So training will take place in many formats. NATO will provide different types of capacity building, also education, and then altogether this makes a huge difference for the Ukrainian armed forces.
Anadolu.
Talha Türk, Anadolu Agency. First of all, thank you very much for the opportunity. I have two questions. Mr. General Secretary, Sweden says that the country is taking necessary steps, necessary measures to eliminate Turkey's concern. However, we are still seeing the rallies of PKK terrorist groups across the country, and they are reflecting terror materials to Turkish embassy building. Do you think Sweden is trying hard to eliminate Turkey's concerns? Also, my second question is about increasing security concerns in Western Balkan countries, especially in Bosnia-Herzegovina and Kosovo, since the beginning of the war in Ukraine. How can NATO address these concerns? Thank you very much.
So first on Finland and Sweden joining NATO, and to what extent they deliver on what they have promised, if I understood the question right. Then, first, all allies, including Turkey, made an historic decision in June to invite Finland and Sweden. All allies have signed the accession protocol, and already 28 out of 30 allies have ratified the accession protocols. This is a very quick accession process. We welcome that, and we do that not least because we know that membership of Finland and Sweden in the alliance will strengthen NATO, it will strengthen the transatlantic bond, it will make us all more safe and secure. in Madrid at the NATO summit, Finland and Sweden and Turkey agreed on the joint memorandum. I was there. We supported and facilitated those negotiations. I know that they were difficult negotiations, but they agreed. And Finland and Sweden are now implementing. They have delivered, meaning that Sweden, for instance, has changed its constitution. Sweden has tightened and strengthened the laws on terrorism. We see that has been expulsions, and also that Sweden has lifted any restrictions on arms exports to Turkey. On top of that, we have established, or they have established, a mechanism to ensure that this will continue. There will be a permanent effort by Finland and Sweden to work together with Turkey in addressing terrorist threats. This is, of course, important for Turkey, but it's important for all allies. And sometimes there are also very close links between terrorist groups and organized crime in other NATO allied countries, including in Sweden and other NATO and in other European countries. But let me add one more thing, and that, of course, when it comes to individual decisions on expulsions or extraditions, that is for the Swedish courts to make. I mean, there's rule of law. So what politicians do, they decide the laws, and they have tightened the laws. But at the end of the day, you need proof that will stand in the court if you want a specific person extradited from Sweden. And that's how it works in democratic states with rule of law and independent judiciary. Then briefly on Western Balkans, of course we are concerned. We have members, we have partners in the Western Balkans. We have the NATO KFOR mission in Kosovo, close to 4,000 troops, helping to ensure peace and stability. And we also have our headquarters and our presence in Sarajevo. And of course we work also very closely with the European Union to help to stabilize the region.
We'll go to Romanian television. Lady there.
Hello, Secretary General. Last night, President Klaus Johannes said that we need concrete plans to know where and who sends troops. So I was wondering if were the logistics discussed, were there any concrete plans after the discussions today? Do they involve Romania and the eastern flank? Thank you.
So we have plans in place. NATO has plans in place to protect and defend all allies. And also that's the plans we activated when Russia invaded Ukraine. And we activated the same morning, and that has led to more NATO presence, now 40,000 troops on the NATO command in the eastern part of the alliance, but all backed by significant air and naval forces. And SACEUR, our Supreme Allied Commander, has then been provided the authority to add even more forces if he deems that necessary. So we have plans. Then, of course, we are constantly assessing those plans, developing those plans, and at Madrid, at the summit in Madrid, we made decisions to further strengthen our force structure based on many different measures, but the key elements will be more presence, especially in the eastern part of the alliance, higher readiness of our forces, a pool of several hundred thousand forces that can be quickly also deployed, and then more pre-positioned equipment, and to a larger extent also more air-marked forces. For instance, we have seen that Germany has already followed up because Germany is the lead nation for the battle group in Lithuania, and they are now developing a brigade that can be earmarked or will be earmarked for deployment in Lithuania with some equipment. They will know the terrain, they will know the home defense forces, and this concept of more earmarked troops will further strengthen NATO's ability to protect and defend all allies.
ARD.
Secretary General Markus Preiss with ARD German TV. I have a question. Everybody's saying Putin is weaponizing the cold and the winter. I'm a bit surprised that you're talking about this on the 29th of November right now. Have you been late to addressing that kind of weapon? Thank you.
Well, we have addressed this issue for a long time, not least by providing air defense systems. I think that the most effective thing NATO allies do is to help Ukrainians to shoot down incoming missiles and drones from Russia. And we also know, and this was also shared by Minister Kuleba, that actually a quite high proportion of the incoming Russian drones and missiles are shot down. So without the significant and modern air defense systems that NATO allies have provided, we would have seen much more devastating attacks and much more damage, including of the gas, the energy, the power grid. Then, of course, what we see now is a very deliberate attack on this critical infrastructure. For me, it's obvious that that actually reflects that President Putin is failing on the battlefield. Because since they're not able to resist the fact that Ukraine has liberated a lot of territory, the way they can respond is by attacking civilian targets. And of course there are thousands of cities, there are hundreds of energy facilities, and of course there is no way all of them can be defended at the same time. But that's also the reason why we are stepping up and urging allies to provide even more, and then try to mitigate with both generators, fuel, spare parts. This is about defending, it's about repairing, and it's about replacing their energy infrastructure, and we are doing all things at the same time.
Okay, we'll take one last question. Journal TV, lady in pink from Moldova.
Thank you, Journal TV, Republic of Moldova. So, the latest security incidents caused by Russian missiles launched against Ukraine and which crossed the airspace of Republic of Moldova, one of which fell in Moldovan territory, have brought back into the public discussion the vulnerability of the Moldovan defense system. How could the allied countries support Moldova in this regard? Thank you.
Well, Moldova is a partner of NATO. Moldova has a very close relationship with the European Union, and many allies also provide different types of bilateral support to Moldova. I recently met the President of Moldova, Marie Sambu, and we had a very extensive discussion on the ways we can try to expand our partnership, of course respecting the fact that Moldova is not aspiring for NATO membership. Moldova is a neutral country, and we are looking into how we can work more closely with Moldova in different areas, but also welcome the fact that NATO allies and the European Union also providing economic support to Moldova to help them mitigate the consequences that they are seeing because of the war in Ukraine. Moldova, being so close to the war, has suffered a lot, and the only and the best way to really end this is for President Putin to end the war. This brutal war of aggression is really bad for the Ukrainians, but it also has ramifications all over the world, with increased energy prices, increased food prices, and power shortages in a country like Moldova. So the lasting way to end these problems is for President Putin to end this senseless war.
Thank you very much. This concludes this press conference. We'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you.